So I want to start with a story from a previous church I served. I just want to be clear, it's a previous church, not this one. So at that church, there's a rule handed down from many years ago that when the office phone rings, it must be answered. Period. End of story. And so there must therefore always be someone near the phone during business hours again. Period. No exception. And no one exactly remembers the origin of this rule, but it has been that way since anyone can recall at this church where I was serving as one of the ministers. Now, never mind that this is the 21st century, that voicemail exists, that there may be, in fact, there definitely are times when there are more important things to do than answer that specific phone call. And so since I came on board to this church a while back, I've been the supervisor for the office staff there. Though I have to say the group there was extremely self-sufficient. All of them had been there for years. They really knew what they were doing. In fact, sometimes, and I say this as a compliment, it felt like they were directing me, which I think is what good office staff does, actually, at organizations, is make sure that you have what you need to do what you need to do. But I vividly, to an example of this, in fact, I vividly remember one day trying, and mostly failing, to get the copier to do a specific task I wanted that was a little different than what I usually did. I think it was like doing something one-sided to two-sided, or to do a booklet layout. Not like a hugely difficult thing, but not something I had done on that specific copier ever. And after a while of struggle, our office manager came out to me and says, "Why are you doing this?" And I start to explain, but she gently redirected me and made it clear that her point was, why are you doing this instead of, say, asking me to do it? And surely her implication was, you have better things to do, and that this is literally my job, so I should give her the papers and tell her what I want, and she will do it for me. And she, of course, was absolutely right and very gracious in the way she pointed out this to me. It was my reluctance that was getting in the way of telling someone, or asking even, to do something for me. Even though, yes, I absolutely had tasks that needed to be done that really only I could do. That woman was a saint for many reasons, including pointing that out to me. But back to the office phone, because with her and others, we were in a staff meeting one day, and this rule came up somehow, and I guess I had not yet been aware that this was a rule. I did notice that we pretty much always answered the phone, her or one of the other office staff, or occasionally me. And so it became clear to me that this was an edict handed down from on high, though I wasn't clear where the on high was. I said, why does the phone always have to be answered? We have voicemail. We can certainly return a call. A ringing phone is not an emergency that has to be solved immediately, at least not 99.9% of ringing phones. I guess if it's the red one on the president's desk, that's kind of a different thing, right? But not an issue I come up against. And so I sort of said this to the staff in that meeting, and I asked, so why do we have this rule, and who made it, and when? And no one, even though some of the staff had been there more than a decade, could really answer any of those questions. And so I changed the rule. Yes, of course, we will try to answer phone calls whenever we can during business hours, but if you have a task you absolutely have to do in a different part of the building, or you're the only one there on that day for some reason, you can let it go to voicemail and get back to it. We can call people back. And so I think of that story often because in my head, I call it the tyranny of the ringing phone. In fact, in that case, it was the tyranny of the phone that might ring. And I compare that to today, because this was a few years ago, in which I honestly don't answer my cell phone if I don't recognize the number, because I get so many spam calls. Everybody on earth is trying to get me a loan today, apparently, for reasons I don't understand. But it's that tyranny. We're assaulted from all angles, even as Tema Okun points out, by our own self-imposed anxieties, which can bring us overload and push us to bad habits, to stress we don't need. And so today, I want to lift up that urgency and importance are not the same thing. I'm not the first person to notice this by any means. Dwight D. Eisenhower, our former president, famously said, and I quote, "I have two kinds of problems, the urgent and the important. The urgent are not important, and the important are never urgent." He pointed out that this was not his insight either, but something a professor had once told him. And I like it. It's a funny line. It's got some good insight. I don't entirely agree with it. I think he was making a broad distinction there. Most people like to give it a little bit more nuance than Eisenhower's quote. In fact, something like there are 4 types of problems, or we might say tasks or challenges that we have in our lives. There are those that are urgent and important, those that are not urgent but are important, those that are urgent but not important, and those that are neither urgent nor important. Again, this is not my insight, but for instance, Stephen Covey, who was famous for writing The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, took this insight and put it into chart form and called it the Eisenhower matrix. So you can imagine a large rectangle and you divide it into 4 quadrants, and there's 1 quadrant for each of those 4 subsets I mentioned. That's a little abstract, so I want to give examples of what this looks like. So urgent and important might be finishing a project to meet a deadline at work, or picking up your sick child from school, or back in my lifeguarding days, saving somebody who is actively drowning. In the second category, not urgent, but important, we might think of strategic planning for an organization, this organization even. Or something like, say, exercising your body, which is important but doesn't need to be done this very moment necessarily. And then there's not important but urgent, which is back to my ringing phone and perhaps responding to some of the emails you get that are really not urgent at all. And then, of course, there's not urgent and not important. So things like scrolling social media endlessly, neither urgent nor important, or watching TV, which can be fun but is not urgent or important, or all of the junk emails you get, neither urgent nor important. And we could fill in these examples with examples from our own lives. To get back to my email example, one of the things I've done in my professional life over the years is to change how I engage email, because I used to live with dread, and therefore I wouldn't read all of my emails, and that did not solve any problems, just to be clear, ignoring emails. So now I try to deal with every single email I get every day, whether that's just deleting the ones I don't need, reading the ones I do need to but not replying, or replying to those I do. I don't always do it the instant I do that, but I try to get through them every day. But I also don't look at email all day long. I engage once or twice a day and try to do that practice. And I fail at this sometimes. If I have ever not replied to your email, I'm sorry. I'm not perfect about it. And I do take days off sometimes, which means I need to catch up when I come back to it. But the point is that I want to deal with my email, not have it deal with me. And that distinction has helped me give time to engage with those things that are important and are sometimes urgent, but sometimes not. My family, like I'm guessing many of you, and several million at least of our friends across the country and around the world, participated in the No Kings protests yesterday. And I want to lift up these protests as an example of what I think is doing it the right way. Because there's a temptation to respond to the latest sideshow every day, every time it happens, whatever that might be. But these protests were not response to a single thing, but rather taking the long view and responding to long-term trends that are important and sometimes urgent. I saw people online questioning what were the goals of this protest? What is going to come out of this? And I saw some really good responses to that question, including from some of my colleagues, some other ministers I know. The most common answer I saw, and this is from the people who have helped organize this too, is to build community and to raise energy for the more mundane moments of the struggle. I like that. Because, of course, there are always worthy and specific things to protest, either for or against this specific piece of legislation, or to lift up a particular atrocity. But it's important, too, to have a long game. The No Kings protest yesterday took place in some 2,000 sites, with crowds ranging from a few all the way up to tens of thousands, even as much as 100,000 in some of our larger cities. I said millions earlier, and there's no way to reliably estimate exactly how many people participated, but it's clear it was millions, perhaps 5, perhaps 8. And that tells me that anytime I worry, anytime you worry, when your feelings about the state of the world, or that everything is crashing down, or that there's nothing you can do, you are not alone. I am not alone. There are other people having the same thoughts, and that together we can accomplish something. It's easy to get overwhelmed and to jump back a little in the sermon. Things like social media, which should help connect us together, can actually make us feel more isolated sometimes. To talk about the particularly insidious form of social media and technology called doom scrolling, which is just such an evocative phrase. I love that, doom scrolling, which is the practice of being, say, on your phone or a computer, looking and looking and looking, scrolling for what? The next anxiety-producing piece of news or infotainment. And this gets back to my topic, can easily seem both important and urgent. Technology and social media have done a really good job of convincing us that it is important and it needs to be engaged with right this second. Neither of which is true almost all of the time. One of my sons came to me the other day very upset about something. In fact, he wasn't so much upset about it as he thought I should be upset about it. I don't know if you've ever experienced this. I don't even remember what it was now. And I said to him, okay, I've heard you. Is there anything we can do about that? No. Okay, then I'm not going to worry about it so much, is what I told him. I don't know if this reassured him or made him more upset with me, honestly. He walked away quite quickly. But I'm trying to reserve my willpower and my energy and my anchor and the power I have for things that I might be actually able to do something about. And so all this spring I've been talking off and on, you might be getting sick of me talking about it, but about keeping a broad perspective, about the view from the balcony, as I've heard it called. It's so important. The things we are called to do today are not always urgent, but they are important. And the No Kings protest yesterday helped restore my faith in that. Faith that we can do something. Faith that we can make a difference for the better. And my confidence that I'm never alone in that. We're never alone. We are always capable of doing the things that we are capable of doing when we can do them, and trusting that others around us are there to do the same. A friend of mine posted online that he had not participated in the No Kings protest, not because he didn't want to, but because yesterday was a day he was called to be a parent, to do parent things with the children who needed him. You may be different in what you're called to do, but you don't have to do everything. You only have to do the thing that you are able to do in this moment. And the good news is that we are in community, supporting one another, always working to make a better world in the ways we can. May it be so.